Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with another episode of the Game Changer podcast. Another special edition here at ATG headquarters in Clearwater, Florida. I'm joined today with someone who continues to inspire me to be a better athlete, someone that puts a ton of time in on his body and his athleticism, but also somebody that is actually one of the highest jumpers in the world. I'm with Connor Dykes. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, definitely. This is one I've been excited about because, like I said, our worlds are so similar in what we train for, the athletes that I train for. So I think this is going to be a great episode to get deeper into how you have become one of the highest jumpers in the world. Obviously you are gifted with natural ability, but you don't just randomly wake up one day and have a 40+ inch vertical. So I just want to get to the bottom of that and just understand what makes you, you. So from my understanding, you weren't always a jumper. We talked about maybe how you played basketball growing up as a kid and you were interested in that, but I want to get to why you started pursuing this goal of being one of the highest jumpers in the world. Where did that start from? Where did you get the motivation, and how did you get into jumping in general?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, I didn't start out in jumping. It took me quite a while to actually find that passion and ambition for jumping. Starting on, I did all the sports like most kids probably do, like soccer, basketball, baseball, but none of them really were something I cared for. Like, there's some kids that are really passionate about the sports they play, and they'll show up to practice all the time, so excited.
Mm-hmm.
But team sports, were not necessarily my thing. It was more so when I turned 17, 18, when I just figured out I could grab the rim or dunk pretty decently, and noticed this was something I'm pretty good at and haven't even really put that much time into. And I think if you can find something that you're just naturally good at that way, it's something you should have ambitions for and really strive to be the best you can at it, because it's really special to find that skill that you want to kind of market yourself as and improve on.
Yeah. So that was kind of one of your gifts that you felt like, hey, I have this natural ability that not everybody has. When you first started dunking, was it easy to dunk? Did you start off maybe just grabbing the rim? Could you, when you were just starting to dunk, when you said you were 16, 17, whatever, could you already dunk at that point?
So I think I got my first dunk around 15 years old, but I was jumping obviously there's levels to it. Grabbing the rim was the first time I thought man, this is so cool. I was probably 15 years old grabbing the rim for the first time.
Okay.
And then the progress originally is quite quick, just because if you start working on something that you've never really practiced before, you can see almost immediate progress.
Yeah.
So just jumping consistently and a lot helped me get to a point where I could dunk with one or two hands pretty consistently, but you wouldn't be able to tell this was a gift I had because I was just starting out, but it was definitely something that I was able to see quick progress in. When I was 18, 19, that's when I started to really see the benefits of jumping consistently and focusing on that skill.
Yeah. Now let's go to now. Your vertical is over 40 inches. And I remember the last time we played basketball, you're literally jumping and shooting down into the rim because your head is at or above the rim sometimes. Now that you've made these newbie gains, what is it like, still finding gains after you've put all this work in? Are you still getting more athletic? Is it taking longer? Is it much more harder? Or some days, maybe there's points where you're not jumping as high. What is it like now that you've put a lot of time into jumping consistently?
That's a really good question. It definitely becomes a lot more challenging to notice results. And that's when the training needs to become a little bit more meticulous. You can't just... The basics are great, and everyone should still keep them into their training.
Yeah.
But you're going to need that little extra push to really get past those boundaries once you already have what's an elite vertical jump. And within the last 2 or 3 years, since I've gotten the vertical I have now, I've maybe gained half an inch or an inch. So you're not gonna, not to put anyone down, but once you're at those super high levels, it is going to be very challenging and mentally tough to stick with it, because the progress isn't going to be as high. But that's what motivates me even more, just knowing that I'm at a really elite level.
Yeah.
So keeping up with the work I'm doing is only just going to get me better if I'm consistent with it.
Right. Let's talk about the work. one of the things that you talked about early on in your journey was jumping consistently and often. Lots of reps, right? What does your training maybe look like in the middle of that journey after you start putting in tons of plyometrics and jumps and you're at that middle of that journey where you're maybe 20 or 21, 22 years old, and you're starting to get to that next level of athleticism? How did your approach to jump training change in that middle portion?
Yeah, so definitely, like I mentioned before, when I was very young, it was consistently jumping. And when I say consistently, I mean like 2 to 3 times a week. But what I have seen to notice with a lot of people that are trying to jump high is they actually overtrain. It's very easy to overtrain jumping just because it's a very taxing movement on the body, and it's just not natural for our bodies to do. So what I found within that 20 to 21 frame, and even what I still currently do, is jump maximally 1 time a week. And you'll be surprised, if you have athletes that you train that do this for the first time, you'll be surprised just how sore you are the next day. And those muscles like below the knee or in your quads, just because it is something that requires more force than like your max effort squat or something. It is literally like outputting the most force you possibly can in a jump. So it's something that you want to definitely approach cautiously, but with max intent.
Yeah. Now let's transition to now. You're already an elite jumper. You've put in the reps. You've already kind of decreased the amount that you're jumping per week. What are you doing outside of that one jump session maybe to continue to find gains? Is it you're working on specific areas that you might consider to be your weak link? Are you working on flexibility? Like, what are you actually trying to pursue now to increase your vertical even further?
Yeah, so definitely beyond the basketball court, having like a structural balance in your body. So jumping itself is a very short range and it's very explosive, like very fast movements.
Yeah.
So obviously we want to strengthen in movements that are similar to that, such as like rhythm squats or short range step ups, which are working through those motion specific movements. But equally important is strengthening through the long range at a very slow pace, because it's kind of building what I like to call a bulletproofing reserve, because there's only a matter of time until you output more than you can handle. So it's having those abilities through like long range exercises, very slow and controlled, with like different movements, like quad specific movements, hamstring specific movements, and then like even below the knee and above the knee. That becomes so important in my training, which I do like 2 times a week. Rest and recovery also so important, where I'm like going on walks just to like recover, like active recovery, and then like infrared sauna, cold plunge, like massages, taking Epsom salt baths. There's so much that goes into that as well that I do after my jump sessions that just make my training throughout the week so much smoother and like fluent.
Is that area, the recovery and those methods, has that become even more important to you sometimes over the training?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's definitely the most overlooked part of like the training, sort of say, just because everyone knows to jump higher, you need to train and get stronger, but you won't get stronger if you don't allow your muscles and tendons to recover from that. If anything, if you overtrain, there's a much greater chance that you'll jump lower than if you train maybe once or twice a week and then focus on the recovery. So big misconception is you have to train all the time. You just have to train smart and like very efficiently.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's similar to speed training. A lot of times, where we're so particular and meticulous with the reps. You don't want to have jumps. Your goal is to not have jumps where you're jumping below your PR, whether you're in a dunk session or jumping to test your vertical. You want to stay at that PR for as much as possible. So I think that's very cool to see how those relate to each other. Obviously very similar movements in the way that they're both explosive. Talk to me a little bit about mechanics. What has been something, or maybe a couple things, that have really helped you improve your mechanics, which in turn is making you jump higher as well?
Yeah, so that is such a big part of jumping itself, the technique and like how you approach the jump. You could be like the strongest human in the world, but if you don't have the proper jump mechanic, you're absolutely limiting yourself on how high you jump. I'm sure you've probably dealt with athletes before that can maybe squat more than you, but have a fraction of the jump height just because they don't know how to jump. But
specifically in the mechanics.
Yeah, to your point on that, I think making sure you have a very fluid run up, making sure you don't stagger or stutter before you run. You also want to make sure you decelerate properly into your approach. That's going to help reduce the risk of injury, and also make sure you're putting that force that you run up into, like into the ground, and then like you like bring in the force, stop, and then accelerate up. So it's like the force equals mass times acceleration.
Right.
So you want to make sure you decelerate properly, and I'm sure you cover movements like that in your training.
Yeah.
And also, there's a lot into the penultimate step of your jump, which is something I train alone, just because it's probably the most important part of the jump. It's the part where it's different from sprinting. You're actually lunging forward almost, and then just locking your like foot into the ground and then exploding up.
Yeah.
And I think we're covering a video on that later, so
yeah,
your athletes will be able to see that too in more detail.
definitely.
But those are definitely the main three, like the push punch, the fluidity or of the jump, and then making sure that you use the force properly when you jump.
Yeah. So for people out there, what I want you guys to understand is this is someone that found something that they're passionate about and then became absolutely obsessed with it. Connor could sit here and talk to me for 30 minutes about jumping alone. Every aspect of jumping, from the first step all the way down to the penultimate, the way that the force changes, all these small things, the exercises, the load management. That's something that I really admire about you because, in my opinion, you had a vision and you had some goals that you wanted to set, and then you became obsessed and extremely clear with what your plan was to accomplish those goals. Whether it's jumping, whether it's becoming an engineer, whether it's becoming the number one Rubik's Cube player in the world, right? It doesn't matter what you're actually doing. The thing that I think makes you a game changer, the reason of you being on this podcast and the reason that we can use this podcast to help others is that you're so specific in what you're trying to accomplish, right? And whatever, it doesn't matter what you're trying to accomplish, having that same methodology and approach that you have, the passion, the clarity in your goals, the steps that you're taking along with it, and then, the dedication that you put into it, I think is something that I admire about you. I want to transition away from jumping. I want to transition away from ATG, and I want to know a little bit about how you've become a game changer outside of those things. So let's talk a little bit about mental growth that you've had. What are you doing to improve maybe maturity or your mental side of things? Is it like something that you're working on, like breathing, right? Or meditating? What are you doing outside of the gym where it's like something physical to improve your mental?
Yeah, so I'm very aware of the goals I'm trying to reach. So like every day I look through these notes that I write in my phone, like of these like long-term goals that I'm trying to accomplish and then how I'm going to accomplish them. I have like recovery notes, like training notes, like how I'm supposed to eat notes, like which just helps me. Like if you just set up yourself properly, it makes it very easy to like just have a clear mind with things.
Mm-hmm.
You want to like put all your you want to hedge all your bets on these type of things and like put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
So I really just, before I even start like doing anything throughout the day, I just kind of like ground myself and make sure I have a clear understanding of what I'm trying to achieve and like what actions I take throughout the day to achieve those things. And you don't have to make such a huge goal. It's like a day by day thing. You just have to be consistent with it and then do the best you can. Some days are going to be tougher than others, but it's the consistency that's going to be like the big game changer part of it.
For sure. Let's talk health. What are you doing to improve your overall health? This could be your immune system. This could be your gut health, whatever it might be. What are you doing to actually improve your health on a daily basis?
So diet, absolutely, I think, is a big factor there. And just eating healthy. Like I tend to eat just like a whole foods based diet and only like I don't try and eat too much like gluttonously. Like I just eat like 2 meals a day.
Yeah.
Very healthy and nutrient packed meals, and then just drink water and go on walks. The recovery, like I talked about earlier, outside of the gym, those are the main things that I do. And then when I'm not doing something like that, I always read articles or like programs online. I'm trying to learn more about, like, even at the level I'm at now, I'm always learning more about jumping and then how to set up my training or how to properly recover. Like all of that just puts my mind at ease too, knowing that I'm putting the best effort in I can, because I'm always trying to learn more about how to best accomplish these goals I have set.
Yeah. I'm not a judgmental person. And one thing that I kind of admired about you, like when I first met you and I'm just trying to get to know you and we're talking about like, do you party? Do you drink alcohol? Do you do this, you do that, maybe like things that you're not supposed to do. And you were really honest with me, and you're like, I don't really partake in those types of things. I don't really have those types of vices. Where does that stem from? Because I feel like in a world where there's so much distraction, in a world where people use escapism to suppress the hardship of life, you're not, right? You are staying sober. You are doing these things. Where does that come from?
I think it's because my ambition and truth to jumping just so much outweighs, like, I don't think it's bad if you want to have an occasional drink with your girlfriend or wife, or if you want to go to like a downtown party or something. But my ambition for jumping and wanting to be the best I can totally outweighs those like smaller benefits. Like, I have a lifelong goal of wanting to jump higher, and those parties and drinking is like just a 2 hour window where you might feel better.
Yeah.
I think training and just keeping my mind and body occupied with other sources of enjoyment, like training, learning, going on walks, eating healthy, it's just so much more beneficial for me too. And I keep my mind rooted to my goal of like just jumping higher every day.
Yeah.
It makes it very easy, like not hard at all to be consistent because of that.
I love that. I can tell, like, I can just hear it in your voice of like how important that is for you, right? Like, that's the whole thing behind becoming a game changer, right? Virus Athletics is obviously important to me. Becoming a game changer is a big part of Virus Athletics. And for myself to become a game changer, that really matters to me. You know, like, I desperately want to become a game changer. And I can feel that same tone of voice when you're sitting here talking to me about how that stuff is nowhere near as important as your ultimate goal of becoming a better jumper, becoming one of the highest jumpers in the world. That's really cool. I forgot. I was going to ask you a question here. It'll come back to me. This is, we can cut this.
Yeah. My phone kept going off too,
Oh, you're good.
so I had to turn it off.
Oh, okay. So it's obvious you found your passion. Did you like try a bunch of different things to find out what you're passionate about? Did you try becoming a chess player? Did you try to major in becoming a doctor when you were in school? Like, what did you do to actually find your passion?
So I'd honestly say I got really lucky with finding my passion. There weren't many things that I really was striving to get better at and like get really good at. Fortunately, I played basketball growing up, which a big part of that is jumping. And that was one of my biggest, like one of my best attributes in basketball, just being able to like out rebound or like put back like layups or dunks on people.
Yeah.
And it was a skill that I didn't really notice it's a very rare skill to be good at jumping, I find, like at the level I'm trying to get at. So I found that out, and I was like, I could totally just master this ability and totally like make something out of it. Like, jumping has its benefits in so many other sports than just basketball, like volleyball, soccer. It's such a more broad subject than just being a good basketball player. I think it's amazing if you want to be a great basketball player.
Yeah.
But it's just not something I was as passionate about as just the jumping and wanting to help other people jump higher.
Yeah. I'm kind of getting towards the end of this here, but what I want to understand, because sometimes I feel this in my own life, like I get that feeling of that fire not being as strong, or I've been like really grinding now for maybe 3 or 4 years with my athleticism and just training in general. How do you not get burnt out? Or if you do get burnt out, what do you do to get out of that mental state?
That's a really good question. And what I think is so important for people to realize is, as much as I love jumping and like making that a part of me, it doesn't make who you are as a person. You should find other outlets too, just to like calm down, put your mind at ease. Like, you don't pressure yourself all the time. You're not an amazing person because you're an amazing coach. You're an amazing person because of so many other things too, and you just got to hone into those as well.
Yeah. It's something that I have been talking so much about with my athletes, because let's just take a basketball player for example. Like, when I was in high school and with a lot of these athletes when they're in high school, like that is the number one thing in their life. And it puts so much pressure and focus where you sometimes lose touch of that, where your performance in basketball can influence the way that you feel about yourself. And detaching from that is critical to not have that feeling of being burnt out or feeling like your self-esteem is being lowered, because that's not the most important thing. I'm sitting here telling you how I can sense how important jumping is to you, but now that you say that, there's other things that probably come first in your life over jumping, like being a great friend, like being a good person, being a good son. Like there's so many other things that I'm sure are way more important to you, even simple things, that help you not to lose touch of that. And
Absolutely.
sometimes that's something that happens to me is I become so obsessed with the goals that I'm trying to accomplish that those become important.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I think it's good. It's a good way to just continue to find motivation in your passion, whatever you might be doing. This is great. Because so many people within my audience are going to be basketball players. They're going to be people that want to get better at jumping. Hopefully, there's some tools and I think some game in there that you said about becoming a better jumper. It's been great to get to know you, to continue to build and grow together. And, it's awesome to come down here each time and hear about the new things that you're working on. So,
Absolutely.
thanks for coming on.
Of course.
Thanks for the game. And, we'll definitely hopefully have you on for another podcast here soon.
That'd be awesome.
Awesome.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you, really.
Of course.
Yes, sir.
Boom.